This is Here in My Time, and I am so thankful and excited you've tuned in to this very first season of my brand new podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Hunt, and I am so honored to say that this first season of 16 episodes, hour-long weekly segments, is actually sponsored by one of my favorite stores in downtown Huntington, Indiana. Can you tell the excitement in my voice? That's right, you've guessed it, Turn the Page Books and Music Store. Rex is the owner of this fine establishment. This is the place to go if you are looking for your next read or to add to your vinyl collection. It is jam-packed full of used books, everything from fiction to nonfiction, and of course a huge variety of records from rock and roll to Taylor Swift. And let me tell you, Rex is the perfect owner because he is a music library. If you need help picking out your first record or maybe adding to your collection, this is the man for you. Whenever you walk in the door, music is playing constantly. You got perfect lighting. You've got the wooden floors. It's the perfect vibe to enjoy your day in. So make sure you stop in and visit, and also follow him on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much, Rex, for your support. It means the world to me. Now on to the episode. This is Here in My Time, the podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between generations. I'm your host, Lauren Hunt, a local personal journalist, photographer, documentarian, and a lover of people and their stories, located here in Wabash, Indiana. Today, I am documenting the life of Rhoda Gerig, and I'm so excited that you said yes, so welcome to the studio.
Good to be here.
I had a little bit of an issue today because evidently my mind is not the same as it used to be, as in yesterday, because I have been running around here like a chicken with his head cut off today for her, but it's been fun. I'm so glad that you said yes. I know you from being an art teacher at Southwood, but you're so much more. And one of the things that you are is a fabulous photographer and wildlife photographer. And I'm just so excited about our conversation. But I want to start off by talking a little bit about your life. So tell me about growing up. What were you like? What is your family like? Where, when, all the things.
I grew up in small town Indiana, Auburn, Indiana. And my mom was a teacher. My dad worked in the factory. Anytime my dad got time off work, we would jump in the car and go somewhere. He loved to travel. So did Mom. And being a teacher and having off, for summers, that was easy then to, take off. And I would have answered, what do you want to be when you grow up, as a zookeeper when I was little. And then I found out that zookeepers had to, clean up cages. And I decided I didn't really want to do that. So I kind of put that out of my mind fairly quickly and decided that after seeing my mom's lifestyle being a teacher, that would probably be a good fit.
What was it that drawed you to being a zookeeper?
Love of animals.
Love of animals.
Yeah.
Did you guys go to the zoo a lot, or did you
we went, but it wasn't like something that we did a lot necessarily.
Gotcha. Were you kind of like a close-knit family? I mean, a lot of the people that I've talked to either had a very close-knit or just kind of a detached because of a big family or something like that. So it was like very chaotic. Now, what was your...
I would say somewhere in between those two. It was definitely a loving family. Not that there weren't problems, but, it was definitely a loving family. It was a good way to grow up. And I had both parents appreciated the beauty of nature and, would take us out in it whenever we could. That's where some of my best memories are.
What was one of the favorite places that they took you? Do you remember?
Actually, this was later, but my favorite I don't know when I first started going there. I think it was my mom and I that went there, but Hocking Hills in Ohio was probably one of my favorite places that we ever went, as a family. So,
what was it about that place? Because it's a beautiful place.
Well, I think the shock that there was something that beautiful in Ohio, and that it wasn't just flat like everything else in Ohio is, except for that area is just, there was one area that was like one trail that you could take that was like walking back into Jurassic Park, with big boulders and ferns. And it was just, and you've got cliffs on both sides. And it's just like walking into a different world. And I think maybe it's the contrast of the flat farm ground, around that made that more exciting because, you come from flatness to this incredible beauty.
So what were you like as a kid? Were you very rambunctious or adventurous?
My mom read a lot of strong-willed child books.
Oh.
I've always had a pretty strong personality, and I'm sure I gave her many chances to practice what she had read in the books. I enjoyed being outside. We had a good neighborhood of kids. I had one friend, she had 2 brothers, and we would play wiffle ball and Nerf football. Sometimes we would have water gun fights. I remember one summer that you just didn't go out without your squirt bottle of, for water, and then like a raincoat, even when you were riding your bicycles, because somebody would attack you, And I mean, it was really, the whole summer was just ridiculous like that. And, I had a friend that she and I would set up a Barbie kingdom underneath ping pong tables in one or the other parent's basement. When one parent would say, "I am tired of all this mess," we would just haul it all over to the other person's. And, that's kind of how I remember, my childhood.
Yeah. What year were you born, if you don't mind sharing?
63.
63. Okay.
I'm the end of the boomers.
End of the boomers. Yeah. Kathy was talking about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So what was it in your childhood? I mean, one of the main things we're going to be talking about in this podcast is photography. So where did that spark come from? Was it in school? Was it just...
My mom was artistic. My dad was the photographer. And when I was 13, we were taking a trip out west. My birthday was going to happen when we were in California, and they gave me my birthday present early that year, and it was a camera and 2 rolls of 24 picture film. So 48 pictures for the whole trip. It was a month-long trip. We went down to Louisiana and out to California, and then came back to the northern states. And I remember at the Grand Canyon, I took 4 whole pictures. And I thought after I left, I maybe shouldn't have taken that many, because I'm trying to, make this 48 pictures, last.
Right.
And now I can take 48 pictures in like 2 seconds,
Yeah.
So it was kind of a fun experience. But my dad, instead of being the kind of dad that, gets in the car and says, "We're not stopping for anything," he said, "Anytime you see something you want to take a picture of, tell me and we'll pull over." That's kind of where I got interest in it.
Where did his love for photography come?
I really don't know. I do know that all of his brothers took slides too. That's what they were taking at that time. And we would get together at Thanksgiving and have slides for hours upon hours. And all the kids would just kind of roll their eyes at how long it took, because we were kind of a captive audience. It still is a joke to this day. And except the last time we all got together, somebody had unearthed some of the slides. And so, of course, we were going through them and laughing that, they would be very pleased that we were, actually looking back at them again. So,
yeah.
And I have no idea where that started with that family, because they were like 2 generations away from Amish. So, to have a camera, it was
interesting.
Kind of,
oh my goodness,
a quick change from that.
Yeah, very much a change. Maybe it was the fact that they now could.
I'm
don't
not
know.
sure.
You know? That's interesting. Oh my goodness. In school as a kid and you had this camera, was it any thought in mind that you could do it professionally? I know it's a completely different time, but was there any thought in your head?
No, it was just a side hobby.
Just a side hobby.
Yeah, just something fun to do. And usually on vacations is when we did it. It wasn't something that I necessarily did daily, because it cost money, like film. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you miss film?
No.
No?
No.
It's coming back.
I know.
It's coming back, and I'm loving film.
I get the idea of like the artistry of trying to get that first shot being the one you want to keep, but digital is so freeing from that. But I get both ends. I do understand people wanting to go back to it and the simplicity of it, but the freedom that you have with digital, to me, is just like, I wouldn't be a wildlife photographer without it.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It'd be way too expensive.
Way too expensive. I can only imagine. I've seen they had all the old National Geographic novels or whatever, those pamphlets or books. And some of those photographs, how they got those with what they had is insane, what they did. I mean, I respect that. I respect that so much.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
I don't know how they did it.
Because now anybody can, if you have enough money, get a camera that and a lens that's going to get you as much as what they were getting or more, technology-wise. It's just a matter of patience after that.
Yes. I think especially most of it is my generation getting back into the film, and they're seeing that. And I think some of it is the fact that we have so much
digital everything else.
And it's so nice to have something where you feel more of a sense of accomplishment. And I think too, like even people that have had a digital camera their entire life or a film camera their entire life, I feel like it's still a discipline. It's still like, okay, wait for the shot. You don't have to just burst the shots all the time.
Right.
Which with film you can't, because you got to crank.
Right.
That's the whole thing.
Well, and every time you hear that click go, it's money in my ear too. It's like, you got to pay for that. So
yeah, I have to admit though, like I want to get a medium format camera and I want to get a large format, one of those big old accordion looking things. I love those things. I want to do that so bad. And it's always the price right now that I keep looking at. I'm like, oh man. But hey, I mean, I bought a camera or a new lens at the same time, so I don't really know. But tell me about how your teaching career kind of got started. Of course, your mother was a teacher, but you said, okay, zookeeper isn't going to work out because I don't want to clean the whole cage. But what was it about teaching?
Honestly, probably as a kid, I saw it as the vacation time that you had. The thought of working 50 weeks out of the year and only having 2 weeks off just would have killed me. And I also saw how it was easier having a family and stuff, because you would be off with kids and stuff like that. Not that I ended up getting married, but, that was something that I did, consider, as something that would work easily, for that kind of a situation. So I did, I'm going to say student teaching, but that's not what they called it. But it was where you could go and just sit in a class and kind of see how things were going in high school and internship kind of thing. And I was in a elementary art class, and a little kindergarten kid was so excited about answering a question that he put his hand up in the air with such force that he threw himself off his chair and landed in a pile below, And I am just like losing it, and I'm thinking, I cannot do little kids because I'm going to be laughing the whole time. That was when I knew, like there was no way. And so I knew I was probably going to go for, junior high or high school. And high school is what I would have preferred. For a while, junior high was fun.
Yeah.
But you really have to be on your game with junior high kids.
Gosh, I bet. Now, were you always an art and photography teacher or what?
Art and math, actually. And I taught
Really?
24 years at White's teaching math. I knew that getting in as an art teacher would be a harder way to get a job, and that if I had the math degree, that would get me in, guarantee me a job. So I had the math minor and an art major.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I just always have known you as the art and the photography teacher.
I worked at White's for 24 years teaching math.
Wow.
And I did actually end up getting to teach some photography there at the very end, which was fun.
Why was it such a hard thing to get into?
Just at the time, they just said that art teachers are, there's a lot of them out there. And so, getting a job is a matter of timing and, are you there at the right time when somebody is retiring? And math teachers they needed, like, I'm assuming it's still that way now, because you can get other jobs with the math skills that pay more, and so it's harder to keep a good math teacher in education. So
was that always the view on arts as far as in your career? Was like, okay, well, it's better off just to go and do this, that, or the other instead of pursue anything in the arts because of the risk?
Yes, I mean that's what I heard from counselors and my parents. My parents wanted to make sure I got a job somewhere.
Yeah.
But and they weren't sure maybe if art would work or not. But and honestly, it didn't until I got laid off at White's because they were downsizing the staff, and I figured I would be teaching math somewhere in MSD, and they ended up giving me an art job, and I was like, you've got to be kidding. I finally get to do the thing I wanted to do. And so it was really nice to have the last 9 years of my career doing that. And it was, a nice payoff for having 24 years of math behind me. And, now I get to go have fun too.
Well, that's cool though. Like, I mean, what was it about actually teaching the arts that was so appealing to you?
It's the same reason I like math. I love puzzles, not the puzzle piece kind that you're doing the picture together, but in art or math, it's a matter of trying to figure out a way to get from one point to another. And I love like figuring out a kid's personality and throwing some ideas at them saying, have you thought about doing this or that, and figuring out the missing piece that they need to kind of go a little bit further. And part of that is people watching and figuring out personalities. And I could tell you, great details about people's personalities and sometimes not even know their name. That's kind of a flaw of mine. But my brain just doesn't evidently remember names. But when I would make assignments, especially for the high schoolers, where I would try to leave it open enough that, they could do a lot of what they wanted to do, but still meet some of the requirements that I wanted them to, work on. I would think through the kids that I would have in the class and think, oh, he is never going to be able to do this, or that's not going to fit her. And how can I open something up that would be something that they would be interested in when I'm gathering examples to kind of show them at the beginning of the assignment. So that puzzle solving to me is just fun. I loved going back into my junk room where all my supplies were, and some kid had come up to me with something, and I'll say, I got just the thing for that, and going back there and pulling something out that had been there for 10 years and handing it to them. Oh, yeah, this is going to work, kind of thing. That was fun, too. Helping people be creative is just, a joy.
It is a joy. So I look at you. I can remember being in class with you, and I can't remember what it was. All I remember was it was like a scratch paper, black, and then you
scratch board.
Mm-hmm. And I did it of like a panther or something, and I felt so accomplished from that. I still have it. I should have brought it out here.
It's funny how people will keep stuff like that.
I should have brought that up here. Oh my goodness. I still have that. But I was like, oh, that is so cool. And it's so funny because in high school as a student, sometimes some people are just like initially so excited about the arts. It's not that like I wasn't excited. I loved art class and I loved everything to do with art. I wanted to be good at it. But later on, I became more absorbed with it. Like now it's my life. It's what I love all the time to do is create something constantly. But could you remember as a teacher seeing a student, one of the things that I remember struggling with was like, I don't know how I'm going to actually accomplish this. Like, how do you teach art, especially when it comes to like drawing or just create? How do you do that?
I read a book when I was in graduate school, I think, called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And the whole premise of the book was drawing is about seeing. It's not about being able to draw. And they would do exercises like putting a picture upside down so that it's not the symbol that's in your head that you think an eye looks like or a fish looks like or whatever. You have this, preconceived idea and you are drawing it. You're not actually looking at the thing. Well, if you turn the picture upside down, it doesn't look normal anymore. It's kind of like the same thing as putting a grid on something and just doing it grid by grid. That attention to detail and looking at it and seeing it is really what you need to draw it. And I did have one kid, I told him I was very happy because he came up to me the first day in my intro to art class, and he was working on these tennis shoes, and it was horrible. And I had already had a pretty good relationship with him because I had him in junior high, and we teased each other. And and I said, okay, honestly, I would tell you to start over, but I said, you may not want to, you may just want to, fix this a little bit. And I always told the kids, I'm going to take you from where you're at and try to move you forward. And we're not going to worry about how yours looks compared to somebody else's. We're taking you from where you're at. And so I said, okay. He says, no, let's keep this. I want to work on this one. Okay. And I said, okay, so we're going to take this out. And I showed him what I wanted him to do in that one area. And I said, when you get done with that, come back up here and I'll give you another little thing. Yeah. And every time it was one of those things where I would say, are you done yet or are you still with me? No, I'm still with you. I'm going to do this. And that's what I wanted, is somebody to try, And we got the shoes looking fairly good. And I said, I'm grading on effort here. You gave me A effort. But he would, throughout the year, as we kept building his skills, he would say, is this a real A or just a sympathy A? And I would tell him, I said, we're getting there. I said, it's probably a real B, but we're not quite at an A yet. And at the end of the class, the last project he did, I gave him an A on. And when I took him the grade sheet, I said, this one's a real one. And I said, thank you for letting me know that the program that I kind of set up, it actually works, because you often get kids that are really good in art and you don't know how much you've taught them or how much they just already knew. Yeah. I mean, you always can teach them something, but, but he was a kid that came in wow, there was no way you would think that he could get to that point by the end, and he did because of the effort that he put into it. And that whole thing about seeing and looking at the details was, the thing that I really tried to focus on. So
as a photographer, we're both photographers, two different kinds of photography, but mostly the same thing here. Have you ever noticed how looking at other art forms really enhance your ability to take a photograph, or vice versa? If somebody was trying to learn how to draw, actually looking at photography, looking at trying to emulate, wow, okay. That's a word that I'm going to try to say one more time. Emulate? There we go. What you see in your own way of doing it. What are your thoughts about that?
I think the thing that photography helped me the most with, there's times that I'll take something and I'll think, oh, that's a Georgia O'Keeffe sky.
Yeah.
Do you know, there are things that you definitely will see, but I think the thing that helped me the most with photography that translated to my other art is composition. And when I was in college, I did several things. And of course, we had critiques, which is always, just like scare you to death kind of stuff, and you walk away thinking, oh, I thought I did really good on that. And then, you hear all these things. And the thing that I always kind of suffered with on that was composition. Like the drawing of whatever I'd done was good, but maybe I hadn't, set up the image or whatever as well. And with photography, that's the whole thing. And you take, especially with digital photography, you can take, however many pictures you want.
Yeah.
And as you start looking at them and you start seeing the ones that are good, you start looking at, okay, what did I do with the composition here? And why is this one appealing to me more than, another one? Mm-hmm. And that skill with photography, and the other thing would be like noticing how important the lighting is and transferring that to, the other arts. Those two things I think are the, where I saw the biggest connection.
Yeah. I love that. I always wanted to ask my art teachers, or like ask other art teachers, like, how do you actually grade an art piece? Because my question to you is everything art?
Yes, but you also have skill in art.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
So what I would do, because it is subjective. In fact, I would even tell kids, if you really feel like I have not graded you fairly, then come up to me and argue it with me. I said, it's not going to upset me that you argue it with me. And I may change my mind and I may not. But I said it's worth doing, because I had a photo that I had taken when I was in Africa. I had printed it off huge, actually by mistake, as huge as it was, and taken it to Honeywell Center for the photography contest. Didn't get in. And it was the best picture I'd ever taken in my life. And I thought, I'm going to enter it again the next year, because if it doesn't get in, then you can enter it again. Well, that year I got honorable mention in color, which was the highest I'd ever gotten in that before. The difference was the person judging it. And you're not always going to appeal to somebody's personal likes or dislikes, that you can't take out of the mix, really. You can try. Like, obviously, sometimes kids would know that I like eagles, and so they would think if they drew an eagle, then it would get them a better grade. And I would always say to them, but I know eagles better, so I might grade you more harshly. And, so I just tried to throw them off a little bit. But what I always did is I always would say, okay, I'm going to be grading on these skills. These are the ones we're going to concentrate on. And there would always be a creativity section also. And, that way, no matter what, one thing it does is it gives you a chance to have a more open project. Like I might give them a theme, or I might give them a medium, like we're going to paint, and then tell them I'm going to be grading specifically on these things, and sometimes give them, kind of a problem solving thing to, come up with to get their creativity going. And, they'd say, that's what I'm grading on, and I am grading on your, where you're at. Have you moved forward any or not? And so, and I would tell them at this beginning, sometimes you're going to see a person that has done something that's really good. And I might have given them an A- because they really didn't push themselves beyond where they already were. And then you look at, like, for instance, the kid with the tennis shoes, that got done with something that was really not that good, but he's getting an A because he worked his butt off to get that, And so I kind of try to set the expectation before that I'm grading each person individually on how they're improving. And nobody usually complained too much about it. But I did have a few students that would come up and challenge me. And sometimes it would be something that I would say, I think you're right, and other times it would be like, I think I'm staying right where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I always wonder because, like, to some kids, it's like they've put their all in it, and it's not that great as far as technically, but they put their all in it, and which I think you were really good at evaluating whether somebody really put their all in something or, just trying to get through the
But I also
project.
broke hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
Somebody that put, like, especially it happened more in photography than anything else. I remember one girl had worked really hard on this project, and I knew she had. I mean, you could tell she had put time into it, But it was also about arranging 9 pictures together and getting the composition of those 9 pictures right. Like, one of the rules that I said is if you have somebody looking left, you've got to put them on the let's see if they're looking left. You got to put them on the right side. And if they're looking right, you got to put them on the left side because then they're looking into the picture instead of out of the picture, sending your eye out of the pictures and not into the center so that you're staying in there. Putting your best picture in the top right, balancing things color-wise, diagonally as well as, left and right. And she had not done well on that. And so I think I gave her a B+. Well, she had worked her butt off and thought that she should have a much higher grade. And I understand that, and I understand the feeling, but she also didn't get the one kind of component that I was looking for with the composition thing. So I don't know. I just remember that, and I made her feel bad, and I felt bad about it too. But I still thought that's what I told him I was grading on. So
Yeah. So let's talk about photography.
I remember you being in a project your sister did.
My gosh, yeah.
That was my first introduction to you. They were supposed to take pictures of people and clone them in different and have multiple ones. Do you remember this?
I don't remember exactly.
She had taken you outside and you were just hamming it up.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah,
I was just laughing when I was looking at it. I was like, okay, this girl is funny.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I remember because we did 4-H. See, me and my sister did 4-H, and we did some photography stuff. But honestly, I didn't really take it seriously. We just like, oh, that's a cool picture, put it on a poster kind of thing. It wasn't to the extent of like what I'm trying to do now.
Yeah.
And trying is the key word here. But yeah, it's so funny because I don't think I ever took a photography class with you, which is kind of sad now that I look back at it because I'm like, oh man, I wish I probably would have done that. But I did take an art class with you. Let's talk about photography in the sense of what makes a really good photo for you. I mean, I know you work in wildlife, but just in general, what makes composition?
Light and composition.
What is composition for somebody who's never...
The arranging of things that makes the picture interesting and draws you in, like a leading line. That could be a lane winding back into the center of the picture, or the direction that, animals are coming at each other or facing each other, or getting the eye contact that draws you in because the thing is staring right at you and you think, oh my goodness, this thing's coming down my eye, like an eagle that takes off and comes right your direction. It looks like it's going to take your head off. Those kind of things are things that I look for in a photo.
You talked about the one that you took, like you thought for the best you've ever taken, but what was it about it?
It had a line. Well, it only looks like one line in a tree, but it's actually 2 for one thing, which is kind of weird. It was the angle I was taking it at. There were 2 laying on a branch, and because I was straight onto the branch, you would see the head on one side and then a rear end on the other side that looked like it belonged to the same, and the branch in between looked like it belonged to the same animal. And when I took the picture from the other side, it was totally different. But from that side, it still looked like one. And the tree was beautiful, and it was in the foreground. But in the background, you have this classic, like, African savanna, behind. And it was like its own little landscape. So you have that tree, which anytime there's a tree, it's cool. And at least in my estimation. And you have the tree, you have the animal resting, and then you have this African landscape in the back, and that layered kind of feel to it. It just was really striking and perfect lighting. And it was one of those things that when you take it, you've got a good one, and, you stop taking them.
Oh, yeah.
Because you think that's it.
I get that feeling sometimes especially like when I'm taking portraits. Yes. I'm like, okay, that's it. That's all I needed. Or like that, I'm just going to stop. You can't do any better than that. Yeah. But for wildlife photography, I mean, it's all in the waiting. I mean, especially like I can structure a portrait inside a studio and have full control. And that's a talent in its own, right? But it's also like to wait and to know when a photograph is worth taking. I mean, yes, you can just well, my goodness, words would be nice right now. Can just take a whole bunch of photos at one point in time.
Pray and spray is what they call that.
Yeah. Well, if my words would work, I would have used the same. But yes, you could do that. But there's something in waiting and seeing it come. So, it is luck. Some of it is luck, but it's also going to. She keeps looking out out my window because we have birds right out for the listeners, and I keep watching her, and I just love it because she just naturally looks out the window, and
it's like reflex.
It's like she just knows. And we have a whole bunch of blue jays and cardinals.
If I see wings flying, I have a response to it immediately.
Pull the camera out like it's like a standoff with cowboys. It's just so quick. You just want to go really quick. Anyway, okay, so when you first started deciding to do wildlife, really particular wildlife photography, what was the steps to get you to that point? I mean, of course you took photos when you were on vacation, but you were like, I'm going to take this seriously and entering competitions.
I took a trip to Africa and I had a high-end point and shoot and got some, that picture that I talked about was one of them, got some really nice pictures. There was a guy on the tour with us that had a much bigger lens, and I talked to him all the time and asked questions. And I got home and I was driving home from the airport and I went by a field and there was a deer in it. And I thought, oh, it's just a deer, And as soon as that thought left my mind, I thought, there's probably somebody in Africa saying, there goes another giraffe.
My gosh.
And I thought, if I just change my mindset, I can go on safari every day that I want. If I stop looking at these things as ordinary and try to find something that isn't ordinary about them, that perfect look or the, in the perfect light or whatever. And so that's what started it. It did take me a while to get the equipment. I wasn't sure I could track, a bird flying. Like around here, the best wildlife that we have is, or predator is an eagle. And I wasn't sure I could catch him in flight. And so I went with my little old point and shoot again to Jasper, Pulaski, where there is a wildlife area that sandhill cranes migrate through. And I thought, if I can't track that big of a bird, then I'm really in trouble, and I know not to spend my money on a bigger lens. But I was doing okay tracking them, and it wasn't a good shot because you didn't have the speed of the camera or whatever that you needed, but the speed of the lens. So I decided I was going to get 70 to 200, get an extender to go with it so that I could be out to 400 and see how that did. Well, I did, and I was able to catch much better pictures with it, but I was not close enough. It's always about getting closer.
Yeah.
And so the next thing I went up to was a 400 millimeter. Canon had a decent 400 millimeter that was a 5.6, which is a fairly decent lens, and I was going to use an extender on it also to get me out to 800. And I used that for quite a few years, went out in my kayak a lot with it, and it didn't cost as much. It was probably close to $1,000, maybe a little bit over $1,000. So I wasn't evidently afraid enough that I was going to tip over my kayak and ruin it. But I later decided to get insurance, but I didn't have it at that time.
Yeah.
And that could have been bad. But anyhow, I liked that, but I kept seeing, and it actually was a eagle cam that I was watching out of Norfolk Botanical Gardens. And they had photographers that were at the bottom of the nest and would take pictures, and then they would share their pictures on this eagle cam. They had a discussion running on the side, and I began to see the quality of the pictures that they were getting, and knew that I really kind of wanted to step up another level. But then I looked at the price of it. It was like $10,000. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't spend that much money. So I tried not to spend that much money for several years and finally gave in. And it was basically because I had decided that, if I could pay that much for a vacation, which I did to go to Africa, then, if I bought this lens, I could look at it like a vacation that I would take every day when I left school and could go out looking for eagles or whatever. And so that's what finally made me allow myself to spend the money on it.
Yeah. Thinking about making the things that you already have around you and seeing the detail and deciding to actually enhance those things around you. I love that. I think a lot of times people don't start on things because they don't think they have what it takes to do. Now, of course, especially wildlife, it is sometimes about the equipment because you do need to be as close as you possibly can, but it's also what can you do beyond. Maybe you can't do that right now, but can you start practicing in another sense with the lens, which is what you did. I think so many times, especially as like artists in that way, is we want to really see the beauty in everyday life and like the things that we have around us. And we use so many excuses why, the everyday person will use every excuse they can to try to just justify why they're not going to do that. Because they're like, well, it's way more prettier. Why would I take, street portraits in Wabash like I do instead of going to New York and taking when there's a whole bunch of people? There is some logistics when it comes to that sort of thing.
Wabash is pretty, though, too.
Oh, yeah. Wabash is really pretty.
I love the brick.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yes, it is. I love it. I'm trying to keep myself from not going through 1,000 rabbit trails right now with you because I could do that very easily right now. But okay, so let's get nerdy for a minute. It's always been Canon?
Yeah.
You only like Canon?
I honestly think that you could get any camera now and have a quality camera. I don't think there were times when one brand was kind of ahead of the game than others, and now stuff is changing so fast with all of them that they're all at a quality that honestly feels like cheating half the time. They have an animal AI now that finds the eye of the animal for you, and sometimes it has grabbed a hold of the eye of like a little bird, especially like eagles I'll catch before the animal AI finds the eye, but little birds, I'll just lift it up. And if I'm anywhere near, if I have that bird anywhere in the frame, it's going to find the eye of it. And before I can even find the bird, it almost feels like cheating compared to what I used to have to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Especially I went out the other day when I was on a hike and I just it was kind of a nicer wintry day, but there's a beaver and I don't have a zoom lens, but my mom has like a kit lens and it's not the best, but it gets you a little bit closer to where you want to go. And so I took that out there and I was trying to get it, and it's just like a Canon Rebel, like the kit cameras, which is still a good camera if you're getting into starting photography just in general, just to get you comfortable with composition or portraits. It's really good for portraits, really, until you get a better lens for larger things and landscapes and different stuff like that. But I took it out there and I stopped at the dam and there was like 5 eagles. I have never seen those many eagles at one place in time. So I just kind of stood there for a minute. I was trying to get pictures, and that was the number one thing I was struggling with, trying to get their eyes or like anything. I didn't really get a good photo, halfly because of the lens, and then halfly I got some good composition somewhat, but it was more I've never had to track something in the sky like that. So I was like just trying to try different things because I'm always about trying new things with my photography. So I was out there standing at the dam and I'm like, there are so many eagles, and you could see them coming from the river, and they were just following the river upwards. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait till the next one and wait till the next one. And it's so cool. What's it about eagles that you love so much?
I guess the first part is they were here.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second part is they are majestic, and I love seeing their feathers and how they play with the wind to, move them slightly one way or the other to get a turn or a dive or whatever. There's something about that that's really neat to watch, especially when you can see it close up with a camera that, lets you see all those details. So those are probably the 2 reasons. The thing I like best, even more than eagles, is fox kits. I waited for years to find a den and then found a den and had it for probably 7 or 8 years. I'm hoping they'll den again there. Somebody will den again there this spring, but we'll see.
How do you plan your little hikes and trips for somebody that's looking to get into wildlife? How do you do that besides going out? Yes, you could start in your backyard, but maybe there's somebody that really wants to start moving outwards and getting different perspectives and places.
A lot of the places that I find is from looking at stuff on Facebook, and they'll give locations. It's something that you have to kind of be careful about because you don't want to say, here is a fox den, and have the place overrun by people, and then the foxes get scared out or disturbed or whatever. So if somebody asks me where the eagles are, I can tell them. The problem with eagles around here, or the good thing, whichever the case may be, good for me, is that they don't stay in one place, and so you don't get a crowd somewhere. There are some places where eagles are for sure going to be there, and there's always a crowd there, and you often, I get distracted by people. I often miss shots when there's that many people there, where if I'm out alone, I'm focused more directly. Most of the stuff I have found on Facebook, or people who write blogs and kind of tell where it is. but that's where that's
Okay. I mean, if you're more into hiking more or whatever it could be, is there sites that you use for that or like anything along that lines? Or do you stay away from trails?
I I do some. I'm looking for something that I can navigate easily, and I have some issues with. I've had a knee replacement and things with my legs that I can go for a certain. I last about 2 miles and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And so I'm not doing a real strenuous trail or anything like that to get something like when I wanted to get mountain goats, I can't climb up a mountain, but I found a place where you can drive up to the top where they're right there.
Wow. That's so cool.
So I look for things like that that will get me the kind of pictures that I want, but I don't have to kill myself to get. Plus, high altitude is terrible to be walking around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you're carrying 15 pounds of equipment with you.
The gear. Yes, I know. When I went hiking and I was like, I'm going to start taking my camera more and just like hike and take photos. Because sometimes I might not be able to get an animal, but I can get a good scene or something like that. So I'll
or
take
wildflowers.
Or wildflowers. Yes, or trees. I really love trees and like the moss on the trees. It's one of my favorite things
I love trees too.
Oh my gosh, there's so many beautiful trees around here. But that was my number one thing. I was like, how am I going to pack what I need? And then it's hard for me to decide because I have so many, like, I have like a 50 millimeter, but then I have a 24-70, which is what I end up taking. But because my mom has a Canon and I have a Sony, I can't use her lens on my Sony. So I was like, I had to take her camera.
And so another camera then.
Another camera. And then I have this horrible addiction to film right now, obviously. So I'm like, I got to take my film camera too. So I've got all this stuff. And I finally got like a little side satchel, which is sitting over there, which I really love for Christmas. And that's something I like to use when I'm especially going to be using for festivals and stuff for taking people's portraits and different things. But I had all that stuff. I'm like, I was so overwhelmed with all the stuff that was happening on my body that I was like, this is too much. So I just put all my film and my Sony back in my car and I just took my mom's camera. And it's like, sometimes it is just taking that one thing and just seeing what you can do with it. Right. So, okay, for somebody that's wanting to start in photography, start in art, and maybe one day print their photos, what would you tell them? How would you say how to get started?
Well, I would probably tell them that there are a lot of people out there doing it, but there aren't a lot of people out there doing it well. And if you're going to do it professionally, you got to find a way to make your style unique and be willing to work harder than I wanted to. Like I had ideas of doing wildlife photography after I retired as more of a job, and I ended up talking myself out of that by the time I retired because I knew that it would take kind of the fun out of it if it became a job. And I found out, like with wildlife photography, unless you are the elite few that get chosen by a National Geographic or a BBC or whatever, you have to do tours with people, basically, and you become a tour guide / teacher to helping them get good photos. And in the meantime, you get to go to these neat places and maybe get a few photos while in between the thing. And I was retiring from teaching where I already felt like I was wrangling enough people, and the whole idea was to get away from that. So by the time I retired, I thought, I don't really want to do the whole tour guide teacher kind of things. You've got to decide what you're going to do to support what you want to do. And honestly, it's getting harder and harder, especially with AI. A lot of the photographers that I will listen to on podcasts and stuff that have been trying to break into the industry, they're finding it much harder because AI can create the pictures that you need for advertising and stuff like that now. And so there is not as many people calling for pictures because everybody's out there taking pictures now.
Well, their cell phone can take just a photo.
Honestly. Everybody thinks they're a photographer. You put a picture on and people say, oh, you should be a National Geographic. And I'm just thinking, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's not that good, but everybody thinks it is. And the thing that I have heard more of from people that are actually working in the wildlife photography business is one of the best things you can do is like be an apprentice to somebody that's already doing it. And even there were several guys that were, going and working for free for them, hauling all that stuff around. And video equipment is way heavier than the still stuff. And and video is what people are buying now still.
Yes.
And so they need people to, schlep all that stuff around for them. So you volunteer to do that. In the meantime, you start getting the connections that way.
It is a lot about connections.
It is.
In this realm, I'm learning a lot quicker is just finding another connection and talking about it, and not to do it as in like I want to get something out of you, but also there is being creative and being a photographer and anything in the arts. Like it can be a very lonely thing, even if you like being by yourself. But how do you navigate the industry? And it's always so hush hush, which is so interesting. I mean, there's more conversations about it, but there's
a lot of people out there though that will tell you that they know how to get this jobs. But there's one podcast that I listen to a lot, and they are interviewing people that are working wildlife photographers, and so you get to hear kind of their stories, and it almost always is a connection, or they're in a very good location. Like if you're out near Yellowstone or you're up in Alaska or whatever, like, that they, know intimately a certain area so that they are able to hone in on, something that's unusual that they only know about in the crowd. 1,000 people aren't there taking the same picture. So it's kind of about finding your niche and getting noticed first of all. And once you are one of those photographers that they're going to trust. I mean, if you think about the amount of money that goes into making some of these, wildlife films and stuff, it's enormous. So the people putting the money in aren't going to take any Joe Schmo, take a chance on them. They want somebody that's proven. And that's why I say I think the best way to do it is getting in as an apprentice, and you're hauling all the stuff around, or you're taking B-roll, or doing stuff where you're starting to build those connections in a portfolio, and learning from whoever the person is that you're an apprentice under.
Right. I think that's one thing that is so important is actually to be in the state of learning, like that mindset, actually wanting to learn the craft and not just saying, yep, I'm a photographer because I took this photo. And it might be an amazing photo, but can you redo it? Can you do it again? Can you continually do it? So what are some good habits that a photographer can start implementing in their day-to-day life to be a better photographer?
Well, same thing I said about art and drawing, that you need to see something. Same thing is true with photography. Seeing the light, seeing the habits of the animal, seeing where the animal even goes. Where's the track that you usually see them. The foxes that I were watching, they had places where I would see them every evening about the same time. And they had treks that they would always do. And if they were going one way, they had I don't know, I think I was up to maybe 12 dens that I knew of in the area. And so if they were going this way, they had to be in, 4 or 5 dens. If they were going the other way, they had to be in, a couple more dens on the other side. And so you just watch them to try to, it's always a game of which den did they choose at the beginning of the spring. And, you just have to start watching to see what they're doing to hone in on things like that. So it's all about animal behavior and also finding the place where you can sit and you're unobtrusive, that you're not
respectful to the wildlife.
And you're not changing their habits and stuff.
So it's a lot of behind the scenes work. Then, especially with wildlife, I guess, before you ever even pick up the camera.
And to add to that, something that's kind of funny is I would take a book. I'm actually in the backyard of somebody that I know. They have a little gravel drive, and I pull in there and I sit and I read a book. And sometimes I've even taken naps waiting for the foxes to come. And some years the foxes have gone after crows. And so anytime the fox is moving, the crows are screaming at them. And if it's one of those years, I can take a nap. And if I hear the crows start, screaming, then I know to wake up and look for my camera and find the foxes.
Oh my gosh.
So that's another side, thing to notice, is that just gave me a whole more relaxing way of waiting for them.
How cool is that? That is so cool that you've recognized even the sounds and the tracks and everything like that. Like I said, photography just enhances everything around you if you're willing to look. And I love that. I really appreciate everything that you gave to us today, all the information that you gave to us today. It's been so fun. I have had a blast. But one thing that you do sometimes is you print your work, right? So where can people find it, and what's the website and everything that we
I have a website. It's just www.rhodagerig.com, and you can find me on Facebook at Rhoda Gerig. And if you see something on Facebook that isn't on my website and want to purchase it, just let me know and I can upload it to the site that I use that prints stuff off.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I will make sure to put everything in the description so that everybody can find you. Now, is your Facebook?
It's open. So
it's a public. Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering. So we'll
I'm on
make
Instagram too with Rhoda.
Okay, I'll make sure to put it on there as well. But okay. I'm so glad that you said yes. I feel like I could talk to you forever. It's so fun to find another person that just loves photography and loves wildlife and just loves everything in between. So thank you so much for being
here. It's been a pleasure.
Oh my goodness. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode because I sincerely did. I am incredibly inspired every single time someone walks into my studio and sits down. I am able to look in their eyes and I am welcomed into their story, and that is priceless. It is a great honor and also a great responsibility to think that when they said yes to come onto my podcast, that meant that they trusted me. They trusted me enough to allow me to help tell their story, and to me, that means the world. So thank you to my guest. If you'd like to connect with my guest, if they left any or mentioned any of social media or websites, it will be in the description box below, as well as on my Facebook and Instagram if you want to see what they look like. I have a portrait and a small little write-up along with anything they mentioned within this podcast. So I hope today that you have been inspired to look at your own life and to see that just living your life is important. But I want to inspire you as well to actually document your life. You have an importance in this world, and I want you to use your voice. So it doesn't have to look like 6 pages in a journal or being on a podcast. It can look like a line a day. If you'd like to connect with me, make sure you head over to hereinmytime.com. That is where I have a bi-weekly blog, as well as some of my portfolio work with photography, and where you can also contact me through email at hereinmytime@gmail.com, as well as follow me on Facebook and Instagram. This is at hereinmytime as well, here.inmytime for Instagram, and I have weekly content. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world. And until next week,